So under our add, if you go to armature, you can add a single bone. And again, we'll look at some of this human and animal and stuff here in a second, but you add the single bone. And let's move that out of the way for now. Whoop. And this is what, and there's different ways you can view the bones, but this is kind of like the basic setup is how it appears by default is you have this bone here and you have, different parts of it. You have basically the bottom of it's called the head, and the top is called the tail. Like so it's more of like the thick part of it is the head and the thin part of it's the tail. And in edit mode, you can kind of see how you get more control over how these, relate. That, moving this, tail part around, you can kind of cause like, like the rotation and it pivots around this head area. And then, moving the the head around is kind of like the main control, I guess you would say. In edit mode, you also have similar stuff you can do as far as editing it. You can first you can actually subdivide it, so you can make it into multiple bones, which is kind of a quick way of doing it. You can also the way that I typically work when I'm kind of like creating my own skeleton or own rig is I will extrude off the top, and this is how they're kind of like you start creating this chain of bones that all kind of relate and they kind of move and interact together. And then we'll say we'll use this box over here, and I'll kind of create like a rough like skin or like a finger shape, and this will kind of be like joints on a finger, I guess, just to kind of show you like the basics of how um you would kind of rig something. And let's go. And one thing you can do too is you can um some people like when you're working in this way, like if you want to see your bones beneath it, there's different ways you can work. You can have like this be transparent, and then you can kind of select that way. There's also under some settings here is you can simply go to view to viewport display and have it in front, um, which is another way of kind of viewing it. If you're kind of building out a skeleton, I feel like it can be kind of distracting that way, but some people are really liking that way. But anyways, I'm going to add some um, subdivisions in here to kind of add some points of, like knuckles or articulation. So it isn't so just boxy. Otherwise, it wouldn't bend. So I'll just create some loop cuts. Um, that's good. That's decent. And then let's go to uh, add a subsurface modifier. And then it's kind of like this really sausage-like finger that I got going on. Um, so the next step, what I want to do is I want to pair these two together, parent them together. And how you do that is you select the object first, then you shift select the bone second, and then you hold down Control P for parent. Then if you do that in the wrong order, this part won't come up. Like it won't show you like this armature deform um, setting. And this is what we're curious about is the armature deform is how this is actually moving and deforming our our skin or our object. Like so if I did um the mesh first, I did Control P, it doesn't come up with that. So that's kind of like how you know that if you there's kind of a fail safe there, right? So you can't like do that backwards, otherwise it won't really let you. So your skin first, then your bone, Control P, and then you want to do, we'll look at some of these different ones here in a second when we're actually rigging our character, but you want automatic weights. And what weights means is how it kind of assigns vertex groups to different bones, like specifically, and it does it automatically by saying like, the nearest bones will um, affect it in different ways, and you can view that um, by weight painting. And again, you can do um, shift select the bones. Oh, if you go to weight paint, you notice here is it shows up in these different colors. So right now, um, and if I do control click, this is kind of a weird hotkey. You notice that these certain bones have different weights assigned to it. Like this, top bone, like is you could say if this is like a temperature gauge, is hotter, right? That this color here at the red or the hottest area is going to have the most effect over this um the skin. And then back here on the blue, it's going to have like no effect, right? Like it's not going to back here on the blue that if I move this, it's not going to move back here at all. Does that make sense? So blue is like non-existent. And you can, we'll take a look at how you can like weight paint this stuff. And this will come into play when we're rigging our character or certain areas that's like, sometimes your rig will get set up where, you'll have like a your eye will be closing and then a weird part of like your forehead will be like closing too, and you don't want that. So you might want to weight paint, some cooler tones in there so it's not as dramatic. Or maybe you want it a little bit more, right? That you're not like it's almost looks like they have like too much Botox or something like that, where it's like only their eyes are closing and like the eyebrows aren't like moving with it, right? So you kind of want to like find the balance between that. Um, but what's great is let's go back to our just selecting our bone, is you also have this pose mode, right? So now you have object mode, edit mode. Edit mode, you're actually like modifying, like kind of like your bone structure. But pose mode is kind of, it's like essentially what it says you're doing is that you're able to pose your rig in different ways. So now you can, yes, Greta.
I'm just curious if this was your modifier or like if you're
Hmm.
just like you want to have really
Yes, but we'll also show something here in a second that will be kind of, yeah, and you have that. You can also like as far as your pose mode does too, you can also set that up where it's like, you know, having the symmetry selected as well. Um, and again, like this doesn't necessarily have to be for, and like I would probably add more um, detail in here too to kind of like so it doesn't crease so much. But yeah, I'd add more subdivision in there. So does that make sense though? Like if I were to again go over to, oh, it's great too. Say like this will apply. We'll kind of get a little bit more about pose mode when we're actually animating, but you can go to um, different settings where you can like kind of alternate between the two over in the skeleton, where you kind of have like the rest position too. Um, you can save different poses is what typically how you work for animation is you go through and you kind of save your different poses and then you kind of like use the computer kind of like in between, between it and stuff like that. Um, but you can also go to pose and you can go to clear your transformations too. So it's again not permanent necessarily. And that's kind of like again like how this animation workflow will do when you kind of do character animation is you'll kind of do a pose, save it, reset, do another pose, and you kind of go from there. Um, and again, weight painting we'll get a little bit more into as we go forward and as needed. Like again, like if I were to see what's something I can do that kind of makes it really weird. If I go to subtract, add, I guess. You can kind of see how this might modify it. right? And like, like sometimes that might be good, right? If you're doing some kind of weird worm and you want it to like, right? Like you get it though. So let's look at actually rigging a character, right? So let's go to save a copy.
Because the head tends to have more bacon than either else,
Hmm.
like the head hands would do.
Yep. Yeah, I would say like head, then hands.
No.
Yeah. Right.
Also, it's like realistically, it's like you know, like setting up
So
Yeah,
so it's great is again we've used like I think one add-on so far, but Blender has this add-on called Rigify, which gives you some great built-in um, bone structures already in place for like character rigging and animal rigging, um, which makes it a lot convenient. Like, eventually, like, you'll get to the point, that you'll kind of will understand about rigging, bones, rigs, and controls, and how that kind of relates. But I feel like using the Rigify is kind of a good starting point. And you kind of saw that when I was like add, and I went to my armature. They see there's like these animal ones too you can use, like, and it has like, yeah, bird, cat, horse, shark, wolf, right? Yeah, I don't know. We'll have to take a look at that. Right. Yeah.
Maybe it's a good.
So yeah.
Whoa.
So here's my like human rig, right? And then yeah, right. And like it's not gonna line up. So like what you essentially do is you have the starting point and right, and like, my A pose is like not as, aligned with that. So I want to go through and actually move this around and size it up so it actually fits to my actual skin, right? Like, and again, like however you want to do that, like if it makes more sense for you to have it, in front or, see through, that. But here's like, where it kind of makes it a little bit easier, kind of like we're just talking about, if you have like this x-axis mirror going on, you have a little bit more, you can kind of, yeah. So things to kind of keep in mind when you're kind of like rigging out um, the hands and the fingers with this Rigify is you want to make sure that, see how like the fingers are kind of curved like this a little bit? That's done intentionally. And even if it doesn't line up, like, see, my fingers are like really obnoxiously straight. I kind of want to follow that. I want to keep that curve there because that's where it's going to tell when I actually transform this into um,
Kind of like the map.
a workable rig, it knows where to actually bend that down. Because otherwise it might be like guessing, like, it might guess like that my hand might be flipped the other way or something like that, which is kind of weird for it to do that. Like right now, like my thumb, I will probably want to rotate this around because where my thumb is, it's almost like rolled over. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
And you can also take a look at what helps too is if you have these axes on, you can kind of see where these different axis points are. And that kind of like helps you as far as like lining this up with your yes, Greta.
If you have a more stylized body, do you suggest for you to start off with, or
I would.
go on?
I would, and then you can always delete as you kind of go. I would, just to kind of like because there's some other stuff we'll take a look at that's built in here. They have like controls that are built in, which are great. we'll take a look at that too, where, um, we'll go through and we'll scale all this. And then, what's great too is like looking at it is when you're kind of, okay, if you're kind of, where do some of these go? They'll let you know too, like kind of where these go. Like this is, um, brow bottom left, right? BL is kind of like the code name for that. This brow top left. So you kind of know a little bit more about where these go. Some of these you got to be careful are connected. And if they get separated, like this I one, it'll kind of cause some confusion when it's actually building out your mesh.
Can you just click on one and then you hit select all and then it'll pick all of the ones from that little.
So let's see. I can move this to what?
Okay.
No, I think it's a hippo.
Is it?
Pygmy hippo.
A pygmy hippo.
Yeah.
We were both right.
Yeah. No, it's good. Yeah, right. So I had this all kind of like pretty close, like, right, like already kind of prepped. So when you go and they've just made released, I think, Blender 4.1, a stable version, and they've even like cleaned up and added some like more organization to like the bone system and stuff like that, which is great, but it's all pretty similar. So when you go to Rigify, one of the things they upgrade, kind of what Ron was talking about, is like upgrading this face rig, where they've added some even more going onto it too. So you kind of want to like apply that that update. And then you want to click on generate rig. Oh, that's where I was talking about these eyes are kind of messed up. I think this is why I saved this example. See how these are kind of off, right? And that's, you'll get these errors and you're like, what do I do? Then like, I've read tutorials, it's like, just start over. And it's like, no. Right? Yeah.
Do you want to give me your
Yeah, so you want like, and what this one is, you gotta read it because this is like saying the I ones are off. So you kind of like, it'll kind of hint at like, okay, what's the issue? And then you can kind of go from there.
Where do you see what you,
So if I go to, let's go back. So update face rig, because that's what I wanted to do. And then when I go to generate rig, because this is just technically like just the bones, it's not actually a working rig yet. And I'll show you what. It says down here at the bottom, Rigify error. Just, well, you can like re-click it. And it'll tell you like Rigify error, and then it'll tell you where they have it, right? Like where it actually like caused, like I'll do it again. Generate rig. Bone IL. Expected 2 eye corners, blah blah blah.
and part of the reason why you might want to use Rigify is because it's pre-made. So you
Yeah.
gotta figure out where the errors are.
Exactly. Pre-named, and then like, I mean, you can go through and name all your there's other stuff too that like I want to show you too, that there's also a system of controls that like on top of the rigs that you can start creating too and programming yourself, where it's like, you want like different parts to control different sections, like like the head might all flow together, like the shoulders, you might want sometimes the shoulders just to move the shoulders, but sometimes you might want it to move the arms as well, right, or the hips and stuff like that. And there's different control groups that you can kind of set up. With Rigify, they're already kind of pre set up.
armatures are one object.
What?
The armatures, are they one object? Or like, is it a series of?
It's a series, yeah. It's a series of bones. And like you can look at it here, like watch. If we look at here's my meta rig, right? And here's all the series of bones that are kind of within it. And then like there's, you know, extra stuff. It kind of goes, yeah, a little bit more.
So that's not our able to individually read.
hmm So what I did there is I moved my cursor to this other point, and then I moved that other.
And auto connect, you don't have to like group it or something.
Mhm. So now I just generated this face rig, and I still need to. And now like so now I actually have my rig, right? It's no longer this. I can actually hide my bones. It's gonna call it meta rig. Um, and that's not the same as like my final rig. Um, which is all these controls here that we see, right? Like, so now this is what I was talking about, where we have like these extra controls. It's great that is pre-included with Rigify, that it kind of simplifies some of the workflow a little bit. And we need to do one last step, and that's parent it to this object. Again, we got to click the mesh first, then our rig, and then go with automatic weights. And now when I go to pose mode, you can move, you know, stuff around. Right now, my clothing isn't rigged, so you have to do, yeah, that too. So there's two different types of controls. There's FK and IK. FK is, yeah, forward kinematics, and IK is inverse kinematics. And inverse is kind of like FK is kind of like what, or we'll talk about, yeah, FK forward kinematics is kind of like more of a traditional way of thinking about it. When we're first controlling those bones and kind of rotating them, right? It's more of like a direct thing. Like this will rotate and control like all the other bones like connected to it. Um, IK is the the reverse of that, where everything kind of follows through. And you can kind of see here, we have these different controls where you can also like, if you move one, you can connect it to the other. And this is under our item. So when we have like the rig and pose mode, all these different things pop up, and you can like kind of control like what they do. One of the ones that's like really wacky is this IK stretch. And I'll kind of show you what that does is if I have like this hand rig selected, and like again, like his shirt comes off, is that like this IK stretch is like it like right now it's at 100, so I can actually stretch like his arm out, like, and you're like, I don't want that, right? Like, um, right. And like with that, without that on, right, you kind of have like it actually like it limits you to like this the size and the length of the arm. And I right. And you might want some of that stretch in there sometimes, right? Like depending on again, like, you know, how cartoony you want. Um, but I again like I don't typically um I tend to turn them off. And again, too, you can like control like how like the foot follows and stuff like that, right? But then yeah, this allows you to yeah, control, you know, like again, like different groups.
And if we wanted to parent clothing, we just parent the body to the parent the clothes to the body.
To the rig. So again, I'll do this automatic weights. Yeah. So now like with that selected, now this.
You can see like.
Yeah, everything I'm pairing to the armature, right? Yeah. Yep, everything. And then you can kind of see too, if I go like, if I click on like my body and look at it with my settings, it actually creates this modifier down here with this armature. So if that makes more sense to you, like kind of how the like the shim between these two are working. Um, yeah.
Yeah.
So that's kind of like how you can kind of see. And again, there's different ways you can do this. And then again, I gotta pair the mouth and all that kind of stuff. So the mouth, yeah, right. You can try like sometimes the eyes, let's see. Sometimes you can get the eyes to pair without having to do anything extra. Um,
Like Tim Burton movie all of a sudden.
yeah. Let's see, kind of no. See how like look how like bad that is, right? With the automatic weights. Like, no, I don't want it to do that. Um,
Basically distorting it.
yeah, it's distorting it, right? And you're like, I don't want it to do that. So we have to do it. Let me make sure it's actually off. I went undo. Yeah. So we got to go and we got to do, and this is like another thing I too that I added. I showed Remus this, but like especially like in stylized stuff, you'll notice too is like the highlight. This is just kind of a silly art thing is like adding your highlight as like a circle. Um, yeah, right. It kind of gives it like that cartoony thing. If you start watching like, animated films and like stuff like that or characters, like you'll notice that they have like this highlight that's like perfect and it follows
Yeah.
the eye, right? And like it's because they added that after. You're like, what is that little extra circle you put there? That's what that is.
What was that? I was watching a big list of like the person going through all the family movies that came up last year.
Uh-huh.
And they had created because it was like, yeah, a common trend in a lot of 3D animation right now seems to be like painting on the irises after the modeling is done.
Yeah.
I saw it on Spider-Verse and then Duck movie, what the title was.
The migration.
Oh, so like doing it like as a 2D overlay
Yeah,
after.
yeah.
Interesting.
That's like, well, that's what my daughter's.
Yeah.
Capstone was, it was where it's animated, but they made it look too.
Yeah.
Doing what she was.
Yeah, that's cool.
And it's kind of a new trend.
Yeah.
Yeah, Spider.
So
Yeah.
that the artist can be more artistic with
Yeah.
the materials, the background,
There's this tool that I really wanted to like if you get a chance and like, hopefully like as I kind of like get to rework some of these classes and having like a follow-up one is like Grease Pencil is like this 2D pencil that you can work within um Blender. It started out as just like the annotation tool, but so many people were using it as like a 2D animation on top of their 3D work that now it's its own thing that you can do like this really rad like stylized stuff where you can actually add 2D elements over your 3D stuff as part of your workflow, kind of like really with Grease Pencil. Yeah, that's cool. But like yeah, people you'll see them do like a lot of these.
I got any more knowledge at this point, and should I at least get this one character?
Yeah, that's why I'm like I don't want to like go too much down the realm of like talking about your next project yet, but yeah. So this time I'm gonna go with empty groups. So I'm pairing the eyes with empty groups. And that what that does is like now I can like just automatically assign my own vertex groups to my eyeballs and stuff. So now I can actually go through and when I go to data here, is if I go to eye left and I go to assign, then I have a little more control over, and you kind of can do this with like your mouth and teeth too, because I feel like it's again kind of hard to Are they separate? Oh, because they're not applied. Dang it.
Those little things you get to do come
Yeah.
out here. Huh?
Yeah, I didn't.
I'm worried about mine.
Yeah, so I didn't have my mirror modifier applied for my eyes. Yeah, I would do that too.
So they're all applied at this point.
Mhm. A good question. What? Yeah.
The big,
I mean, it's not a huge commitment because like
you can save one before and then add it and have it.
you could do that. But really what it is like you can always like you'll see a lot of people too is like sometimes they'll be going through a workflow and they'll forget to even do the mirror modifier. So you'll delete half your mesh
I've done that.
and then add a mirror on top of that, which is a way of doing it too. So empty groups, edit mode. Can hopefully I'm not missing a step here. Select data, I left, assign. And then that kind of allows it to
And so that bar kind of thing we were seeing up front, that assigns those eyes to that bar.
not to the bar, but there's these bones that yeah, that oh that's one thing too you can pull up is over here. So on my when I have my skeleton selected,
Mhm.
you can control what you see and what you don't see, which is really great. Is that you can show more of your bones or less. I feel like these are kind of hidden because they're behind. Let's see. You can kind of see more or less bones. And like that's the one that I kind of popped out right here is this eye bone. And like again, like depending on what you're working on, it kind of helps, right? That you don't always need every control in the world to do your thing. Um, see now it actually moves
Properly.
without,
And you get a little bit of that iris.
yeah,
too.
right. Yeah, just a little bit though, right? Like not too much. Like if you know, sometimes if that was like terrible, you could like weight paint it, stuff like that. And then you do the same thing with the mouth. And the mouth has, let's see. I think the mouth is done. It's the teeth and stuff like that's not. So if like if I had it, right, like he'll just, grimace, right? Like um but then you also have again like some of these other controls that are kind of fun where you can go through and um, you know,
Mhm.
kind of add a little bit more into it. And then even like there's all these different sets too, right? Like and you can kind of learn which ones work a little bit more. You can select some in tandem. Um,
When you say in tandem, what is that?
I guess at the same time, I don't know if I'm using that word correctly, but like I'm selecting both of these
Okay.
and I'm using them together.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah. Um, right. Did you see that part, Greta, where I did the assign the vertex group, so now the eyes can actually. So yeah, under I'll just kind of how I had it was, I signed them with like these are already signed, but I did with empty groups, and you're gonna have to do this with teeth too, because just how they line up. And essentially what you want to do is you want to make sure that there's this like bone here that this is pretty close to the center of your eye. I know this is off, but make sure yours is a little bit closer to that. And then when you go to select this and go to edit mode, you select all the vertices or the vertices that you want. And then you go to this over here under your data, and you can like say like, assign this to my left eye, and then you sign it specifically. And then like same thing, like, I'll probably do that with my eyebrows because they're a separate object as well. And I want to be control over them. So when I go through and do my, eyebrows, I could do, I would probably do like, yeah, brow, um, top left, brow, top right. And then that's how I would assign, my individual eyebrows too. Teeth, right? You can search for that. Bottom teeth, um, top teeth, but like Greta was saying, like your top teeth aren't really moving. Um, but it will kind of help as your whole head moves, and then your tongue too. 'Cause that's something you'll see when like when they're talking. You kind of want some control over that. But then again, too, it kind of plays back to these control groups that like again they kind of like all work together, which is again really helpful with this rig setup. So that they're all embedded. Like, I can move the eyes as a group, or I can move them, individually if I want to get like really wonky, right? Like, which is cool.
That's Stranger Things.
Yeah. But again, like, yeah, I think like the even like the subtle, like, I didn't do the hair either, right? So the hair is gonna fall off. But like the shoulders move. But you notice too, like the hands don't move, which is sometimes good, right? Like, does that make sense? Does anybody have any questions about?
Yeah.
So finish your retopology.